As you know, I'd like to see a completely different system of how we fund our campaigns, because I think that would improve things across the country.
Now, the last time you were in, you were talking about legislation that you were putting together to try to get rid of some of the super PACs or all this outside money into politics. I mean, the need for that is even more apparent, I believe, today than ever before, with Sheldon Adelson and Foster Freeze and the Koch brothers and
no question.
on and on, Karl Rove and these super PACs. But what is a realistic possibility?
Well, you got to have something put forward that I think is a meaningful proposal on this. And in the next few days, I'm going to be introducing what I call the Grassroots Democracy Act, which is a piece of legislation that's designed to really empower the grassroots. What we have now is a paradigm for funding campaigns that's basically dominated by big money and special interests.
Totally.
And, let's look at the problem. The average person out there looks at our political system and they say, how can my voice be heard when Sheldon Adelson and super PACs are throwing so much money in there and affecting campaigns? And that leads to the cynicism that you feel. It discourages not just participation in the funding of campaigns at the grassroots, but voter participation at the polls.
Sure, some people just stay away.
They say it doesn't matter. So we've got to develop a different paradigm for how we fund the campaigns. Citizen-owned, grassroots-funded, people-driven campaigns, instead of campaigns that are basically owned and operated by special interests and big money. And the way you do that, I think, is you create a system that can multiply and maximize the power of the grassroots funder. So what we've done in the Grassroots Democracy Act is put forward sort of three components that can do that. And I'm very excited about this because I think it is a realistic proposal. The first thing is you got to broaden participation at the grassroots. Right now, a very small number of Americans giving over sort of $200 are powering campaigns in this country. 0.26% of Americans, yes, at the congressional level.
Yeah.
So how do you broaden participation? Well, we start by saying let's give a tax credit of up to $50 during an election cycle, a 2-year cycle, to Americans who want to contribute to a congressional campaign. So if you, Bill Press, say, well, I want to give $25 to this candidate, then you get, in a sense, you get that $25 of your tax payment back in the form of a credit that you can use to underwrite your contribution to that candidate. We think that will have the effect of broadening the participation at the grassroots. That's an initial piece, and there's other components that I'd like to talk to you about.
That's kind of it's a step toward public financing of campaigns, isn't
Absolutely.
it?
And this would be a system of funding campaigns to a combination of the power of a grassroots donor plus some public funds that could come in and help support that.
Several calls here, Congressman. Before we do, there are two other parts. Quickly, just name what they are.
So there's the tax credit of up to $50 during a cycle. The second piece is a multiple match. So if you're a grassroots donor and you give $20 to a candidate that agrees not to take PAC money and agrees to go out and build a grassroots network of donors, then that contribution will be matched at 5-to-1 or potentially 10-to-1. So it takes by a fund, a public fund that is created in the Treasury. And we have different ways of raising money for that, which we can speak to. But the point is it takes a $10 contribution, turns it into a $50 contribution, multiplies the power and impact of that grassroots donor's participation in the process.
I like that.
And the third piece is we set up a people's fund. And that's there in cases where the candidate that you contributed to that's trying to do the right thing suddenly finds himself in a place with super PAC money coming in. They can go to this People's Fund, get some extra dollars to help get their speech back in the game and to fight back against it. So those three components can help create a different paradigm for funding our campaigns.
Yeah, and it'll totally change campaigns and maybe get them back to what they, at one time, we thought of campaigns as people power, not super PAC power. Steve is calling, Congressman, from Salinas, California, Sam Farr's district. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Good morning. Almost awake, not quite.
All right, get to it. What's up?
Well, I think there's a simple way to have publicly financed campaigns. It's not easy, but simple. The airwaves belong to the people. Why can't all qualified candidates get X amount of free minutes in the media areas of their electoral area?
Well, I have to tell you, Steve, hey, appreciate the call. that I have argued for that for a long time at the risk of getting fired by the television station I was working for in California at the time. I think that should be part of the equation.
It ought to be in the discussion, and in fact, I think it's something over time that we have to look at. Now, of course, you're going to get a hard-fought opposition to that from the broadcast industry and so forth. What we have done in our bill is we've looked at the promise the broadcast industry has already made, which is to give this lowest cost per unit charge to candidates. They're supposed to give you the lowest cost. So in other words, they can't jack up the price or try and gouge you. But there's some loopholes in that. So what we're trying to do is close those loopholes. In other words, they might say, well, we'll give you the charge that goes with a time period that's not associated with the campaigns, but they might go back to Thanksgiving or go back to like Super Bowl Sunday and take that rate. Well, that doesn't help you any. Or they might say, we'll give you the lowest cost per unit, but we'll run you at 4 a.m. in the morning. So what we're going to say to the broadcast industry is, you said you would provide some discounts here. We're going to make sure you actually do it. So we've included that provision in this bill because it's a great point.
We might also talk someday about bringing back the fairness doctrine or something like it. I don't want to get you involved in that controversy, but I just throw that out there. I know there is also, Congressman, an effort, movement toward a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. Are you part of that, and where is
Absolutely.
where is that going?
It's a three-legged stool in terms of how you push back against money in politics. One piece is disclosure and transparency, which we have to pursue. The second piece is a constitutional amendment so that we can effectively repeal the effect of that Citizens United case and put some controls and limits on the amount of corporate spending that comes into our politics. And then the third piece is this idea of grassroots-funded campaigns. The first two are restraining bad actors. The second one is trying to empower good actors, which are the people of the country, who really ought to be the ones that are underwriting campaigns. So then we'll answer to them instead of answering to these corporate interests and big money.
So given that we have run out of time, people who want to sign up, who want to learn more about it, how can they do so?
I have a site called grassrootsdonor.com.
Okay.
And that's where they can learn more as well about this initiative that we're undertaking.
Particularly about the Grassroots Democracy Act. So grassrootsdonor.com.